life of Ned Kelly. Billy the Kid, John Dillinger, Al Capone. What do you think when these names come to you? Criminals, infamous criminals with fantastical stories about them. American outlaws, men that fought the system. Ned Kelly was an outlaw who fought the system, but he was from the land down under, Australia. Ned Kelly is a divisive person in Australian history. He is either seen as a hero, a Robin Hood type character who stole from the rich and helped the poor, or just a criminal. I researched Ned Kelly because roguish characters in history always interested me. There was something about a person fighting against odds, fighting against the corruption, and coming out on top even though they shouldn't. So that's always interested me. And Ned Kelly did so with ruthless aggression, but as a mild-mannered gentleman. So, we will talk about the beginning. It's young Ned Kelly up there. Ned Kelly was born to the father, John Red Kelly, an Irish exile, who was sent to Australia after he committed some crimes in Ireland, stealing some pigs, and his wife, Ellen Kelly. Now, as a young boy, Ned Kelly's father was arrested for illegal possession of deer hide and meat. Basically, if you couldn't prove it was yours, that you got it legally, then you could be arrested. So he was sent 6 months hard labor, and when he came back, he was a broken man and fell into alcoholism, died of kidney failure a year later. So Ned Kelly brought up with that. There was a story about young Ned Kelly on his way to school where a young man fell into a river and started drowning, and Ned Kelly swam in and saved him, even though he himself could barely swim. The family was so happy that they made him a red sash that he carried around himself for the rest of his life. At age 14, he met bushranger Harry Power, who taught him the ways of being an outlaw. Basically, what a bushranger would do is they would steal cattle or horses, take it over to the next town, and get somebody to sell the horses to somebody looking to buy. And then they would get a legal bill of sale, basically allowing it to, proving that they had sold the horses, but because they couldn't prove they had stolen them, there was nothing they could do. So the police knew that Ned Kelly was an outlaw going outside the law, but they couldn't prove it until the Fitzpatrick incident. Officer Alexander Fitzpatrick was an officer of the law who had had a couple run-ins with Ned Kelly and his family, and he wanted to be the one to bring him down. So one day he goes out to the Kelly homestead, and the reports differ because it either comes from Officer Fitzpatrick or the Kellys. These are the facts. He goes to the house. He tries to arrest his brother, Ned's brother Dan, with horse theft. He has an altercation with Ellen Kelly, the mother, and he gets shot. Either it is by Ned Kelly or by himself by accident. But in which case, they come to an agreement that he will not press charges, and if they just let him leave. But as soon as he gets back to the police station, he files charges of attempted murder. So they arrest his mom, put her 3 years in forced labor, not pregnancy labor, of course, hard labor, breaking rocks into little rocks. And they put a $500 bounty on Ned Kelly and his brother, who obviously go on the run. They meet up with a few of their friends and create the Kelly Gang. Now, 4 constables, which are basically just higher officers, go and try to chase down the young men. And they weren't very smart about it because they split up. And the gang ambushed them and killed 3 of them, and one got away to tell the tale. After that, he received an $8,000 bounty reward, dead or alive. It was the biggest bounty ever put on anybody's head in Australia. Afterwards, the government also made a law, as soon as I get it, no, this one here, the Felons Apprehension Act, basically outlawing the gang and allowing anybody in Australia no matter if they're officer or citizen, to shoot Ned Kelly on sight, just as long as they got him. So between the years of 1878 and 1880, no one would dare to even try to get Ned Kelly, because to a lot of people he was seen as a hero, because a lot of the police officers were corrupt, and like I said, they could arrest you for just about anything and put you hard labor in a land like Australia that tries to kill you. It was pretty dangerous to do that. But between 1878 and 1880, the Kelly gang would rob banks, going to different towns within the area of New South Wales. And what they would do is they would ride into town and cut off the telegraph center, so no messages could go in or out. Then they would take some hostages and bring them into a hotel or a tavern, and then sit with them overnight. And while they sat with them, they drank, told stories. People would ask them questions if they were truly the devil or evil, or if they ate their bodies, and they would say, no, none of that. And then in the morning, they'd keep the hostages where they were at and go rob the bank. Normally when they robbed the bank, they would take all the money from the richer vaults and try to burn any debts that they found of any of the poor people, kind of trying to even things out, which just made the common people fall even more in love with them. This happened up until the point where they go to the town of Glenrowan. It began as any other bank robbery. They go and shut off the telegraph system. They go and take some hostages. However, one man escapes, and he warns the police, who quickly mobilize and surround the building that they're at. The Kelly gang, clad in their special iron armor that consisted of a helmet, a front plate, and a back plate, as well as a lap plate to hide the groin, begin firing with the police officers outside. Once the firefight starts, Ned Kelly does try to call a ceasefire to allow the 62 hostages inside to escape. However, the police officers are worried that the gang will try to escape, so they actually fire at the citizens or just immediately arrest them there on the spot. And some of them even choose to go back into the building itself to cover from fire. After hours of fighting, finally, Ned Kelly leaves out the back and goes around the line of police and begins firing at them with two pistols, one in each hand. As the police fire back at him, the bullets ricochet, ping, 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 off his armor, and he says, "You can't kill me, I'm bulletproof," laughing maniacally. That is when Sergeant Steele, who is seen here, the man in the hat there, capturing Ned Kelly, noticed that his legs were not covered and shot at him twice with a shotgun, bringing him down. The rest of the Kelly gang did not make it out alive. Edward Ned Kelly was found guilty and sentenced to hang November 11th, 1880. His last words were reported saying, "Ah, well, I suppose it's come to this, such is life," and he was hung. What we learned today. Ned Kelly is a decisive figure in Australia even today. Some people look at him as their own Robin Hood, a real good figure that helped the poor and fought against the corruption, which did actually come to light after his life. There was some changes made to the government and some changes made to the police force. A lot of people lost their jobs after this happened. Edward Kelly is a figure clothed in iron and myth. In Australia, he's still a decisive figure. And what we learned about him is that he was almost forced into the outlaw life, because at the time it was so incredibly difficult for someone to live an honest life. We learned about the criminal actions that he made, as well as the deeds that he did that created that decisive thought that people in Australia have about him today. We also went over his final stand as he laughed at the face of death, leaving behind a legacy that would mystify people all across the globe to this very day. Thank you very much for my presentation here on Ned Kelly. I appreciate you guys listening to me, and I hope you learned something today. Any questions?
No?
Thank you very much.
Australia has a Robin Hood.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, actually.